my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him. Now, if you apologize like I know you're going to, I might convince him that you really didn't mean it.
I saw the whole thing. You killed all four of them. You'll pay all right. You'll be strung up.
Who are you?
Don't fire a shot. I'm John Baxter, sheriff.
Yeah, well, if you're the sheriff, you better get these men on the ground. My mistake. More coffins.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. All right. How do I do Clint Eastwood?
With squints.
Right.
He actually... Okay,
Yeah,
so
okay,
this is what surprised me. I was expecting a really deep voice, because I actually hadn't seen these yet. And then he had a really normal voice.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow.
It's very un-Western sounding,
Yeah,
actually. Like
exactly.
I was wanting to like put in a drawl there, but I'm like, no, wait, we're doing Clint Eastwood.
You can't do it, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
find that very funny.
So just imagine us all squinting.
Yeah,
We're right.
we're squinting the whole time, guys.
Yeah,
Everything's
so of course,
blurry.
the film we are talking about today is A Fistful of Dollars.
It's actually per un pugno di dollari,
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I'll just refer to it as that
Italian.
the whole time.
but that's not what I
Yeah, I
watched,
could go a couple
unfortunately.
ways.
Wait, what did
But you
watch?
recommended this one.
you
Yeah, this
assigned
was
these
your
movies.
idea.
I guess I got confused by the original, or what this is kind of based on, and I stuck with some, I guess, in the same continent over there, and I watched Fist of Legend.
What?
Fist of Legend.
Well, maybe we'll have a little sidebar where you can
Yeah.
talk about that briefly.
I'll have to watch that after.
Way at the end, after the outro bumper of the podcast, you can just
When we're
spill
not
all the
recording.
beans on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, yeah.
Anyway, I am the host, Reese. To my right is,
I'm David.
to my left,
Irina.
and further left,
Noah.
and way off in a distant land, we have.
AJ.
And I'm going to announce the movie one more time. We're talking about A Fistful of Dollars, film that came out in 1964, but was actually released in the U.S. in 1967. Directed by Sergio Leone, who has also directed the other two films in the Dollars trilogy, along with the Once Upon a Time trilogy, which features Once Upon a Time in the West, Duck, you sucker, and Once Upon a Time in America. He's actually not got a very extensive filmography, and I think he kind of tapped out at 7 or 8 films when all was said and done. I think it's around 8 films.
It's a decent number, I would
Yeah,
say.
it's kind of spread out through, a good 30 years, though, so
Okay.
not the most active filmmaker, but highly influential.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch Duck You Sucker.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to say it with an exclamation every time.
You need a comma after you, not after duck.
Yeah. The film stars Clint Eastwood, Marianne, and no high school laughter here, Cock, Gian Maria Volente, Wolfgang Luksch,
You're going to be at this all day.
Siegert Rupp, and Joseph Egger. With a screenplay by Sergio Leone, Victor Anders Katina, Jaime Comas, Fernando Di Leo, Duccio Tessari, and Tonino Villarreal.
I wonder
There's a
why.
lot of people writing this movie. I didn't actually dig into why there's so many writers, but
Wait, why would they have so many writers when obviously it was just a taken script?
well, yeah, it was definitely adapted or remade from Yojimbo. but I do not see any Japanese names in this screenplay, so. We usually get into the music later on, but I just want to shout out Ennio Morricone, who recently died, who did the iconic score to this film and basically partnered with Sergio Leone on almost all of his films going forward after this.
Well, weren't they classmates growing up? I think they were. Like, that's why he got Ennio Morricone to join.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and he was originally kind of against the idea of hiring him on, but then Ennio Morricone came up with this, I don't know, I guess it was the theme was so captivating to him that there was no other option in his mind. He was
He was like, this
set.
has to be it.
Yeah,
That's
in fact, I read that this movie lingers on certain shots longer just to play more of the score
Yeah, I love
because
that.
he loved it so much.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which I kind of like that.
Well, Leone used Morricone as a screenwriter, whereas if you're not familiar with the movie production process, usually after everything's shot and filmed and you're in editing stage, that's when the score is composed to fit what you see on screen. We actually did this
Right.
in reverse here, where Morricone wrote the score as kind of a screenplay before there was any filming going on. So that's how
Oh, wow.
that's how pivotal the score is here, and we'll talk about it quite a few times in the next coming episodes as well.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I mean, these scores are very influential to the genre and just culture as a whole. And
I want to say since then there have been a couple of films that followed a similar approach. I don't know off the top of my head, but there have definitely been a couple where it's like it was score first or something else came first, and then they built the movie
Frozen?
after that. Not Frozen.
Don't even talk
I
about
mean,
that.
he is right, though. Actually, they wrote the
Yeah.
music first.
That's why
Yeah.
it sucks. Sorry.
Oh, actually, one I know for sure. Joker. The most recent Joaquin Phoenix Joker.
That's surprising.
Some portions of that score were actually done before that movie was, or during filming, actually.
Man.
There's a scene, I'm not going to spoil it for people who haven't seen Joker, but there's a bathroom scene. I think you see some of it in the trailer, but that score playing there, Joaquin Phoenix was actually acting while listening to that score. So,
That's
That's
an
actually cool.
It probably helps you
interesting
get in
style
the
of
mood.
filming.
anyway, we're getting off track. So on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So guys, had you all seen Fistful of Dollars before this viewing? And I'm going to start with Irina this time.
Okay. I had not seen this movie before. I feel like somewhere culturally we were all very misguided on what the first movie in the franchise was.
Yeah.
Because I always thought it was just The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I never
Yeah.
heard anything about Fistful of Dollars, maybe casually or offhandedly, but never connected to the man with no name character. It was always The Good and the Bad, the Ugly. And I started watching that once and a while back, and I felt
remember.
like I was missing a lot of information, and it turns out I was. So I'm glad we're getting to cover this in the proper sequence of films this time. So
Yeah. So you had never seen any of this one.
no, this was my first time.
How about you, Noah?
It's the same. Same as Irina. I hadn't seen this one. I had previously thought that it was just, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I hadn't seen that either. So I was kind of excited to
Yeah.
open this one up.
But you had probably heard of the Dollars trilogy or the Man with No Name
I had
trilogy.
heard The Man with No Name.
Almost something kind of folkloric about it, where you know the references, you know his image, you've seen Clint Eastwood as this character before. It's constantly referenced, but I hadn't ever seen any of the original creation of him.
Yeah. David, how about you?
Same. I honestly thought that I would have seen this somewhere at some point, and when we watched it, part of me was thinking, yeah, this is kind of familiar. My grandmother was huge into Westerns, so I thought maybe somewhere in my history growing up, I would have seen it on in the background. Maybe I have, but none of it was familiar. Similarly, I didn't realize the Dollars trilogy was a thing. I thought they were separate. So I did know about the other ones. I just didn't know it was a trilogy.
I think there's two kinds of grandparents. There's the John Wayne grandparents and there's the Clint Eastwood grandparents.
My grandparents were both.
Yeah. Our grandparents are probably more the John Wayne side.
Yeah.
I would always see a bunch of John Wayne DVDs, VHSs at their place.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood's a little too gritty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually something to be said about that because this movie was kind of a hallmark for incorporating more violence into movies than other Westerns had been at the time.
Oh, I bet there are so many, Christian moms that were mortified to see this movie.
Oh, yeah. AJ, had you seen this film before?
I had. I guess I was the rare occasion where I grew up with both John Wayne and John Ford movies in general, and Clint Eastwood stuff. And if I watched TV, there's a kind of a 50% chance it'd be a Western on in the background. I don't know that I truly gave this movie a full, thorough watching, start to finish. Just kind of something on in the background. But for the most part, I had seen these before.
Yeah. And I have seen Fistful of Dollars once. I want to say it was a few years back. Just like you, I probably could have paid more attention to it. I think it was a late night viewing. I was like, I haven't watched this. I should probably get around to watching this because it's a classic. And it's a big oversight on my part. So I might have just forced myself to put it on at an hour that I shouldn't have been watching it. But I do remember a lot of it. But definitely watching it thoroughly at the right time, I have a much bigger appreciation for it now. But we'll get into that later. So, before we get into the story, just a brief history. This kind of revitalized the Western genre in the time. And Westerns were kind of waning. The American Western was kind of dying off. The spaghetti Westerns, there were about 20 to 25 of those films that had released already, and none of them were hits.
Spaghetti Western.
Wait, have you never heard of that?
No?
A spaghetti Western is purely a Western directed by an Italian.
Okay.
And there's a specific
I get
amount of time in history where they were kind of dominating the field as
so
Westerns in America were going down, I guess.
A little history. This is the first example of like true spaghetti Western as a popular thing. And the thing that was happening in Italy was they would try to kind of represent their films as American. So they often led with an American actor while everyone else is an Italian actor or producer or director. And so they didn't have really television over there in Italy at this time. They did in the Americas, so they had a lot of like kind of oversaturation of American Western television shows. But here, this became a huge deal to Italians because they would all of them would have at least a theater in their town or city. So
Okay, that's kind of cool.
The modern equivalent would be like Bollywood.
Right.
Movies that are kind of made in Southeast Asia or India, Pakistan that, are, I guess, budget version of Hollywood movies. Same thing with the spaghetti Western. They're more budget conscious because of the constraints. And actually, this movie was a multinational operation, financially backed by Germany or West Germany at the time, obviously led by Italians. And then a lot of the cast and crew were Spanish and filmed in Spain.
All right.
Now I know.
Are y'all ready to get into that story?
Yeah, dog.
All right. We're going to roll that trailer first.
This short cigar belongs to the man with no name. This long gun belongs to the man with no name. This poncho belongs to the man with no name.
Rico! Heard you wanted to see me. What's wrong, Ramon? You losing your touch? Shoot to kill, you better hit the heart. Aim for the heart or you'll never stop me.
The man with no name. Danger fits him like a tight black glove. He is perhaps the most dangerous man who ever lived.
Get 3 coffins ready.
An unnamed American rides into the border town of San Miguel. The stranger watches a little boy looking for his mother, Marisol, who is apparently being held captive. He then meets Silvanito, the town's innkeeper, who tells the stranger about a feud between two criminal families vying for control of the town and leaving a wake of death. The Rojo gang is led by brothers Don Miguel, Esteban, and Ramon, while the Baxters are led by the nominal Sheriff John and his family. The stranger decides to take advantage of the town tensions to make a profit by playing the rival families against each other. He publicly establishes his reputation and demonstrates his prowess with a gun by handily shooting 4 Baxter men who harassed him when he arrived into town.
I like that, and this is something that comes from it being a spaghetti western, I think, and Leone being such a visionary director, even at such an early point in his career. This movie is so kind of ambiguous about a lot of things. Like the character, you don't know his backstory, and it's all the better for it. He always has his visor kind of down. You don't have an insight into much of his thoughts.
Yeah.
And that adds to the mystery and mystique of his character.
Yeah.
I also like that the setting, you vaguely know when and where it is, but it's never specific. You know that the only thing they drop is that it's south of Texas. So somewhere in Mexico, I'm assuming, is where this takes place. And you barely know the time period either. There's I think there's a tombstone that says 1860 something or it's somewhere. Yeah. I didn't catch it, but I read that somewhere.
I believe it is in Texas on the border, because later we go into another part of the point where they see the Mexican army, right? And it's more of like a deal across the border.
He makes a comment about how both the U.S. government and the Mexican government are going to be converging. So
But the thing about you mentioning his ambiguous character, I feel like there's especially a lot that Leone puts into these scenes to kind of explain to you visually with certain kind of information without having to directly tell you, because he wanders into town, doesn't talk to anyone. He's accosted by the bell ringer, who is constantly asking him questions. Are you here to make money? Are you going to join that side or this side? What are you going to do? Are you going to leave? You'll probably die or something like that. And he gives him nothing. Not to mention, he walks in with this poncho, which, similar to his character, he's kind of concealed in all sorts of ways. So you don't know anything. And the bell ringer is sort of acting as the audience, asking, like, who is this guy? What is his motive? Is he good or bad? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's different from what the norm was at the time, right? Where you normally, when you see a cowboy you're supposed to root for, they're clean cut, they have either no beard at all or trimmed. And
white hats.
And it's well manicured almost. And this is the exact opposite, dirty and rugged, and you don't look like you want to like him, but he's the guy, you can tell.
Yeah, it's in those eyes.
Eastwood said in an interview that, comparing to what you said, the traditional American Western at the time, with, everyone's got clean clothes on and stuff, and say John Wayne, for example, they see a damsel in distress, and they immediately rush in, swoop in their knight in shining armor, just, with stirrups on. But
just kind of Galahading it up.
Yeah, and here we see the stranger, or the man with no name. He sees Marisol in captivity. This kid is being beaten up and stuff, and he just kind of keeps watching, drinking the water from the well. He doesn't rush in to rescue anybody. He's just kind of taking it all in with measure and kind of getting the lay of the land.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it, planning maybe.
It's definitely trying to be a little more realistic about this setting, where everyone's sort of out for themselves, has to be cautious about the motives of everyone around them. So there's no real virtual good and evil to be displayed here, because it's just a rough and tumble world.
Yeah. And this is so interesting, too, because when I read that this was basically a remake of Yojimbo, it got me thinking of other movies that are so influenced by this and Yojimbo, where we have this kind of mysterious main figure who wanders into a town, and there's drama in this location, and he kind of, messes with it a little bit, but then at the end he walks off into onto his next adventure.
Yeah.
This happens in, I don't know if it's ever been said, but I think Mad Max is very much inspired by The Man with No Name.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
That is the modern day Western where
I could see it.
Mad Max, ambiguous character, he kind of wanders in and out.
Yeah.
Just happens to run into these little pockets of land where there's people that are, having their little
there's
disagreements.
Definitely a similarity
Yeah,
there.
and he lights a fuse and leaves.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's throughout all 4 Mad Max movies. So there's something about this structure to a film that just really works.
Yeah.
And is just the epitome of cool.
Oh, yeah. Because it's that Lone Ranger vibe, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I know Quentin Tarantino takes a lot of inspiration from Leone's works and this trilogy in particular. Yeah, and Yojimbo itself was actually adapted from Red Harvest, a book, which is itself very influential in a lot of stuff. So this is really coming from good stock and just kind of really good hallmarks and
It's
very
got
influential.
solid bones.
Yeah. Well, you can say that some of the best stories all have been repeated over and over throughout the history of time. So they're not always uniquely original, but they are individual to the director and their voice.
There's
Same
never
recipe.
an original thought.
Yeah. I did
And
like the
this-
scene that, he goes past the guy who makes the coffins, says, start building 3 coffins, and then
Yeah.
has his confrontation, talks
Oh,
about
yeah.
his donkey or whatever. Just
Yeah.
lighthearted, not afraid of these guys who are obviously, really deadly intimidating people. Knocks them all out because he's, got the skills, and then he's like, my mistake, 4 coffins.
One of my favorite lines.
It was a great
It's so
one-liner
good.
there.
He has a little bit of humor in there.
I think that whole sequence is one of my favorites of the entire movie, to be honest. I thought that
Yeah.
was such a hard intro into this movie. Like, it
Yeah.
really set the tone for what you're going to watch the rest of the movie.
Actually, really, my favorite thing about this movie is watching Clint Eastwood just kind of slink around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I love him just getting a read on this town.
Yeah.
And, he's reading everyone, figuring out all of their motives without saying a word, which on the without saying a word part, that was all Clint Eastwood who decided to dial back the dialogue, and it ended up really working out for this character.
awesome.
That's funny you should say that, though. The director actually compared him to a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying that he kind of like moved around and kind of
Yeah.
was staring at things in a very, I guess, feline way.
Yeah. But yeah, he's such a physical actor, I guess. He doesn't need to speak.
Yeah.
This role would have been
It's
much
that
lesser
presence.
if he was a chatterbox.
Yeah. So his role in this was not originally their first thought or Leone's first thought for this cast choice. He was kind of looking at higher named actors, American actors, but then it was suggested to him that Clint Eastwood might be their best bet because he couldn't actually afford anything greater.
They originally wanted James Coburn, who did
Yeah.
things like The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
But he was $10,000 more expensive,
I
so
think
guess who it went to?
I think it was just right place, right time because, Clint Eastwood had been stuck in this Rowdy Yates role in Rawhide for like
7 years or
7
something.
years.
Yeah.
And so then this opportunity, he was like, hey, I have a contract with this TV show that says I can't make movies in the Americas, but
Which is
they
so
didn't
weird,
say
'cause
anything
he's an
about
American-
overseas.
He's an American
I know.
actor.
He's
It
like,
just sounds so-
he's an American icon.
Can you imagine it any different, though?
Yeah. And anyway.
All right, before we move, I want to talk about his look. The poncho, it's so amazing. It's been carried over into so many different things. It's iconic. The hat, the way he tips his hat, he doesn't. It's
yeah.
not some obvious like I'm tipping my hat to you, madam.
pulls it down
It's
a little bit.
he just like just those
It's
slight
something
little,
like a twitch.
It's one of the
Yeah.
most perfect costumes in cinematic history, in my opinion.
And so simple.
yeah, exactly.
And due to budget
just his-
constraints, they actually didn't have duplicates of costumes, and he brought a lot of it, like the pistol and I think some other things from his own.
Yeah, the jeans I think were him too.
Yeah, from Rawhide and what he had already, and he supplied his own. That's how low budget this production was, and there's a
Yeah.
language barrier for sure as well. Like, I don't think Leone really spoke much English, and Eastwood didn't really speak Italian, and then they're working with Spanish and German
Yeah.
coworkers, and it's a testament to the art form that they can accomplish something like this despite those barriers.
I heard that when he had the clothes in the movie, that the director himself actually spent time dirtying them up for the movie. And that was also, I guess, slightly different than before because you would try to have clean clothing, but he actually worked at tattering them up to make it look lived in and used. So I thought that was really cool.
And one shout out to Massimo Dellamano, who did the cinematography to this film. They tried some new things on this. That you get your Western wide shots that are totally beautiful in this, but they also played around with extreme close-ups.
Which is now a popular thing.
It was for more effect. They had a more modern camera that you could catch a lot of detail on extreme close-ups. So they employed that a lot. So you would see a lot of shots that are just the mouth, nose, and eyes, very intense and personal.
Yeah.
It's also a hallmark of Leone, his style, as well as expressing the internal emotion of the actors without dialogue with those.
Right.
I mean, he just loves the human face. He just, like you said, he goes from the ultra long shot and then right into someone's face, and it holds it there almost uncomfortably long, and sometimes just because you're reading their emotions and what they're thinking.
Yeah, and I love how the shots linger. It's not lazy. It's just it's not in a rush to get anywhere. It's like we're living in this moment. It's just as intended. It doesn't feel like a product off an assembly line. It's like we're gonna let you just totally be immersed in this world.
Yeah, I feel like we've almost been prepped for this kind of movie based on more modern stuff that took influence from him.
Yeah.
Because you see that more nowadays than they probably did when this came out. People like Quentin Tarantino, I think he even said that this is one of his, most
influential.
That's the word I was looking for. The most influential of directors that he took inspiration from. Inspire.
Yeah.
I love that pause when
Yeah.
you realize you had to use the word multiple times.
No.
So one of the
Rock in a hard
cool
place.
anecdotes that I learned when looking into the making of this was, again, with how Clint Eastwood, because he was the American lead for this film, he kind of pushed the film in certain directions, kind of under Leone's nose a little bit, because there was a sequence where there are many ways where this broke the Hays Code at the time, which was like the moral code for filmmaking. And this went beyond what violence was allowed to be by that code.
Yeah, this was edgy.
And one of his choices, one of Clint Eastwood's suggestions, was to have the shot in the same, like the shooting of a villain or a opponent in the same shot as them being hit. So in most old westerns, you would see the gunman shoot, and then it would cut to the person falling over, being hit by the bullet. But in this, they kept that in the same frame.
Yeah, it was over the shoulder.
Yeah, so it's over the shoulder, and
that guy
apparently
with the
that
machine
is
gun.
pushing it over the edge because it's just too immediate.
Yeah.
And I just love that because of that suggestion, that sort of pushed everything to this extreme tension in these shots.
I will say it's funny how a lot of those soldiers get shot in the lower back and they clutch their lower back and fall down the hill.
Oh no, my
There's that one guy. Oh gosh, they're all running up those hills, and they just one by one are falling, and
Yeah.
Kinda
That was the only part I was
dumb
kind of taken
ways.
out of.
It didn't age well in
and
that
there's-
one sequence.
yeah, there's that one guy that he gets like shot in the head.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
he
yeah.
just puts both of his hands
yeah.
on his head
Ow,
like
my head.
and like falls down.
Irene and I both commented on that guy. too.
Anyway,
Anyway, before we move on to in the plot, this will be the biggest section just because there's so much to just kind of unpack. But how do we feel about the Rojos boys and the Baxters and this little village overall? Like their dispute. What's going on there? I don't even really.
so the thing is they're kind of holding together this town, and it seems like it's mostly Rojos and Baxters, and everyone in between has either lost husbands or just people in general. So there's a lot of death.
They're all widows.
And very few middle of the road people. So it's two powerhouse families kind of
It's a
trying
territory
to
war.
vie for the, power of this town, and kind of trying to keep it on a low radar mutually, because obviously there are like cavalrymen and people coming through, so they have to keep things quiet during that time. But
Yeah.
that's mostly what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't really pick up on what the dispute was. Maybe I should have paid more attention
It's
to that
just-
or looked it up.
Power struggle, who's in charge, and it's all about money. These people are attracting hired killers and outlaws and stuff like that. It's like the bell ringer in the intro said, you're either going to get rich here or you're going to die.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
what
he
Clint
also-
Eastwood's
he
character
also
is
made-
about, is making money. That's why it's got they're called A Fistful of Dollars. So
Yeah, also that other line, 2 bosses is one too many.
Yeah. So I like how Silvanito is kind of the guy representative of explaining to you sort of what's going on. I will say you kind of need some subtitles here just because the dubbing over is a little jarring and the quality of the audio doesn't make it easy to hear what they're saying. But
product of the times.
Yeah, so I had to watch this twice just to make sure I was picking up on everything. And but I like this Silvanito guy just because he almost begrudgingly kind of likes our protagonist here, and he goes back and forth between sort of admiring him and then chastising him, and I just kind of like his little bickering in the background a little.
You want to continue that story, AJ?
All right. The stranger seizes an opportunity when he witnesses Ramon Rojo and his gang ambush a detachment of Mexican soldiers who were escorting a delivery of gold. The stranger takes 2 of the dead bodies and plants them in a nearby cemetery. He then sells information to both groups, saying that 2 Mexican soldiers survived the attack. The Baxters want to use the supposed survivors to testify against the Rojos, while the Rojos want to silence any witnesses. Both sides race to the cemetery where a gunfight erupts. Ramon Rojo shoots to kill the decoy survivors, and Esteban Rojo captures Antonio Baxter.
That was a really unique way to get them to kind of fight each other there. I thought that was just whenever I was really into this movie at that point.
I will say it was kind of funny though how he was like, if you stage the bodies properly, they look alive. And like when he was done staging them, I was like, no, they still look pretty dead.
They do comment later. The Baxters are like, they look more like dummies.
Oh yeah, that is true. They do call it out.
But earlier, I really want to talk about our lead antagonist. I'm calling them protagonist and antagonist just because they're not...
Just to not...
it's like not true villain, not true hero.
They're all villains here.
Ramon, like his name is constantly kind of dropped here and there, and you've met all the characters up to this point, and you believe, oh, this Ramon guy, he's gonna be like serious business.
Whoa, that's
because
Ramon,
we haven't met him yet. And I remember the first time I saw him with I guess it was a Gatling gun, just shooting down all the cavalrymen. I immediately you have that sense, oh yeah, here's our bad guy, just the usual sadist. But slowly I started to just really like this guy. I think that actor is really, really good. Volonte, I think his name is.
Yeah, Gian Maria Volonte.
Yeah.
He's very charismatic.
Yeah, Chick comes back for the second movie, and he's
weird.
even better in the second movie, in my opinion.
Oh, I'm excited.
And but in this one, he adds so much to this character when it could just be a stereotypical villain. And in some ways, like as much as I like Clint Eastwood, I kind of liked this guy a little more. And
Really?
I think he's a unique villain and sort of started that leading into intelligent villains where they play things smart. Even though he gets a little passionate, he has a little machismo. But especially when he first meets our protagonist, and his first shot is him at the top of the staircase, and then we have Joe, or the man with no name, at the bottom looking up at him, kind of dictating this superiority and realizing as the audience that, oh, okay, this is the real obstacle.
His cogs were turning like
Yeah.
at that instant, and you could tell. And whenever he leaves that first conversation and he talks to his brothers, like, no, this guy is way smarter than you think he is.
He's too smart for you guys.
And I really like that exposition there. Though.
It's always a good villain when they admit that the person, the antagonist to them, is actually intelligent and they need to play safe.
Yeah. So I thought that, if we're backing up just slightly, I thought that massacre is probably the least successful sequence in this movie. Mainly because it was, and I know this is, again, product of the times.
Yeah.
It was largely bloodless and almost comical. I don't know. It was...
I was looking for the bullet holes in all the bodies and
and also
didn't see them, really.
I had no real emotional connection to any of the people involved at this point. Sure, you do come to learn more about the villain.
Yeah.
But to me, it was just, look, it's showing a bunch of people running around and they're all getting shot, and it doesn't. Sure.
You're right. I think it was more for establishing his villainy.
Yeah.
So I don't really care about what's happening to those people, but I know that Ramon means business.
Well, he's like, it's supposed to establish his villainy, but also how he is the mastermind technically behind this operation, because he's technically the middle child.
Yeah.
And we've seen Miguel and Esteban. Esteban is the young, rash,
fiery
sadist who's always laughing and basically has no brains. And then Miguel is the one who's more diplomatic, and you think, oh, he's in charge of the operation because he's at home. But when you see Ramon, like, all of these plans have been a result of him.
Yeah.
So.
And he's very lethal.
Yes.
Because he also establishes his, prowess with his Winchester rifle. And we get that alluded to early on where, he's got
Winchester.
The 45 and the rifle, and they're both, experts at their weapon.
Yeah.
I'll also say the plot is a little confusing at this point. Not seriously. It's I just kind of I was still trying to get a grasp of the motivations on both sides.
Mm-hmm. That's actually one thing I like about it. Not that it's confusing, but it's more that you're watching a story unfold and they're not just giving you all the details. It's kind of letting your mind do the work. And that's something that Quentin Tarantino does in a lot of his movies, so it kind of shows that inspiration could have come from that aspect.
You're definitely getting that mental gymnastics to like, what is happening? Your brain is doing a lot of work, like you said. It was at this point that I just realized the plot.
Yeah, and I started to put it together when Clint Eastwood, or the Man with No Name, started kind of pitting them against each other and really setting up the traps for both of them to fall into.
Put the bodies there.
But before that, I was still I was a little confused.
To me, I just always viewed it as kind of, this is another Dread type movie. Just from the beginning, all right, you know what? It's just going to be him against pretty much these gangs, and they're all going to die. So
that said, he's not a tank. He's just, he's sneaky.
Oh,
and he's
no.
Scheming.
I'm not.
He's 2 steps ahead.
Yeah.
The parallel I'm drawing is less in personality and more in just the fact that they're a one-man show.
Yeah. They're not going down and you know it.
Yeah,
he uses brains.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this whole decoy situation, I think this is one of the points where, like you said, you start realizing who the protagonist is and what the storyline is. But also, that was a very weird situation because I didn't understand how you couldn't believe that those bodies weren't alive, or like how they were dead already. Yeah. I don't know. They weren't moving.
Sorry. The thing is, the man, I'm just going to call him Joe, since he is referred to as Joe in this movie, even though I'm not sure that's actually his name. But
in
Joe,
the second one, he's Manco. So.
He's really banking on both of these sides being idiots.
Yeah.
And he's really putting a lot of faith in nothing going wrong in this situation.
Well, actually, okay, so about that, it's less so the fact that he's hinging it on the fact that they're idiots, and it's more to do with the fact that they believe that they're at the pinnacle of their game. So it's due to it's like Icarus, they're flying too close to the sun. They're not going to be able to see.
He's playing with their overconfidence.
Yes, exactly.
Their missions.
It's more about that than him just thinking, oh yeah, these guys are dumb, so this will be fine.
Yeah, and he's playing off the fact that if each of them sees the other in this field, it's going down. And that's I guess that's it. But,
also, I think because they're such big families, there's a lot to lose. Whereas with his character, he doesn't really have anything to lose. He doesn't have any money. He has everything to gain. But with these Baxters and Rojos, they have an establishment. They have money. They have power. But that could easily come tumbling down just by 2 survivors of slaughter, basically, just ratting them out. But the point is, I think also why it kind of seems weird that there are just 2 dummy-looking bodies sitting there is possibly because of filming as well, because they do a lot of day for night scenes in this film, which is, if you don't know, they film during the daytime for night scenes, but they underexpose it so that it looks like it's nighttime.
Except for it doesn't.
Which I know it doesn't look like night, but I think scenes like that look better.
Yeah.
Especially in modern times, they've figured out how to really
they've figured it out. But here, I think it's because we can see it so clearly that it kind of breaks that illusion. So we're like, how could they possibly think those are alive? But who knows? Maybe at nighttime, you know what it's like looking at things in the night. You might think that it looks like a live person.
I thought it was just during the day. Whenever I was watching it, I wasn't even thinking about it.
No, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the audience at this time. I think this is probably the oldest movie we've covered so far, and technology is different and also the audience is up to speed with that. And we're coming from it, with 2020 eyes, 2020 vision. I'm glad you brought that up because that's important to recognize that it was immersive at the time because that was the technique that was common.
And also, they did incorporate some little cricket night sounds to try and help you.
Yeah, just like the last episode of our podcast. Cicadas, though. So let's carry on with the plot.
Meanwhile, the stranger prowls the Rojos' empty hacienda, where he reflexively knocks out Marisol when she runs across him. He takes her to the Baxters, who arrange for a prisoner swap for Antonio with the Rojos. After the swap, he learns from Silvanito that Ramon had framed Julio, who is Marisol's husband, for cheating at cards, and thereby taking Marisol as prisoner. That night, while the Rojos are celebrating, the stranger rides out and frees Marisol, shooting the guards and wrecking the house, making it seem like an attack from the Baxters. He gives running money to Marisol, urging her and her family to leave town.
So I think this whole Marisol side plot is to give Joe, I guess, to tie him more to the side of the good slightly than just this completely ambiguous middle ground.
Like out for himself the whole movie.
Yeah, I think it gives him some sort of identifiable heart for the audience. Like he does care about people that are oppressed or in a bad situation. He's not just there for the money. I do think this is necessary to make him a more likable character that you can at least identify with on some human level versus him just being some entity of chaos.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of liked it. Anyway, backing up, how did we think about his infiltration of the distillery and his, you said reflexive. I'm just going to say he punched Marisol in the face.
It's straight up punched her in the face.
Well, he probably thought she was just some other, soldier lying. Well, not
yeah.
soldier, but
I love how conveniently it ended up working out for him, though.
Yeah, you're right, AJ. It was reflexive.
I do like, though, that he's this guy, this protagonist is established as not your typical protagonist. They're kind of bad. And they even incorporate him punching a woman. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah. Just to Reese's point, too, that he does have that kind of good side or good tendency. When he is in the hacienda, they, the Rojos leave Chico, I think is his name, behind as guard because he can't just leave it unguarded. But he doesn't shoot him. He just, shoots around him to kind of distract him, and then he gets comedically knocked out. Yeah. So that does, like you said, tend to show him in a better light than, if everyone's bad in this movie, then I don't think anyone would watch it, especially at the time where this was already controversial, and why it wasn't received well in America was because highfalutin society didn't like the dirty side. They saw True Grit, but they didn't want to actually see True Grit. So
again, bringing it back to Mad Max, he's that 60% good, 40% evil. Not evil, but neutral.
He's out for himself.
Yeah,
The interesting thing about this sequence is that it still maintains him as a very neutral character because he does punch her out, and she is knocked unconscious. So there's like some level of, oh, whoops, But I think that's only because she's basically defenseless. Unlike the Rojos, he doesn't shoot for pleasure. He only shoots to gain something. And if he doesn't have really any real reason to kill someone or maim them, he probably won't do it. It's a waste of energy. But he takes her back to the Baxters just to get more money, essentially. He doesn't actually really care about her, I would argue. It's just sort of I want to make sure she's all right, but I don't really care about her story. I don't care who she is, because at this point, he doesn't know, her family dilemma.
Yeah.
It's just great, because he completely knocks her out, and that was an accident. But he's like, well, might as well use this to my advantage. And
well,
like, all right.
Especially since he finds out that, what is it, Antonio? Is that the son of the Baxters? I think it's Antonio. He finds out that he's been captured by the Rojos for ransom.
Yeah. Very, very convenient for him with that mix-up.
Yeah, and this actress, Marion Koch, she's actually apparently a pretty famous German star.
Yeah.
She only gets one line of dialogue in this movie.
That's rough.
Yeah. She's fine.
I mean, she's fine. She's big.
Her annoying kid gets more lines.
Actually, you're right.
The thing I actually like about her character is that from the beginning, you're kind of trained to think attractive guy, attractive girl, love connection. But in there isn't.
Yeah, it never becomes
there's
that.
kind of this teasing that, oh, he's kind of fascinated by her. Maybe there is, but it never comes out that way.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's a more interesting story for it.
It's true. I still will say this is a man's movie. This is a man's movie.
I mean,
at that time, it's a man's world.
Yeah. For the time, it still portrayed her as a strong character because, I mean, she's obviously in sexual slavery and she's not completely downtrodden. She's still holding her head high and trying to be strong and still looking for an out in the situation, I feel like. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Margarita Lozano, who I believe she plays the Baxter wife. I actually thought she was pretty good as well, especially in one of the pivotal scenes towards the end.
Yeah. There aren't that many women, but they have some strong women in here.
Yes.
I heard it was a little bit different from the original. Was it Yojimbo? Where I heard she was more conniving behind the scenes in this one.
She's they're leading a brothel basically in Yojimbo, and she's kind of the matriarch of that side a little bit, sort of pulling the strings, but it's her and her husband.
So
anyway.
I did want to ask you, so far, how close is this to that film?
It's actually a lot of the scenes and sequences are very similar.
Yeah, it's almost carbon copy.
Yeah, exactly. But there are the weird thing is certain scenes in this film and certain artistic choices that were made, I actually liked better. They were my favorite parts in this film were the ones that weren't directly in line with Yojimbo. Especially, I think something that this movie has a beat on is having you introduced to all the characters within the first, what would you say, like 20 minutes? Mm-hmm. Whereas in Yojimbo, they kind of hold off showing you the lead antagonist a little bit until halfway through the film, basically.
Yeah. Wow.
And I feel like Ramon gets more of a character development in this, which I really, really like.
Okay.
Yeah, like the coffin scene in the beginning, where he's, saying make 3 coffins, that's straight from Yojimbo. So even the really big elements of this are, I guess, unfortunately, you could maybe look at it carbon copy or kind of just copied or duplicated. But like Irina said, the stylistic choices are what really draws the difference.
It's so funny, too. There was a bit of a rights dispute for this film, and that's actually what delayed its release to 1967 in the U.S. because I want to say it was Kurosawa Productions or Studio or something like that.
Yeah.
They caught a whiff of, what Sergio Leone was cooking, and
they're like, hey, that's our movie.
Yeah,
that's our dinner. We cooked that.
So in Japan, they took ownership of it.
Yeah.
And what I've heard is that title, they actually changed the title, and if you translate the title of the Japanese release, it translates to The Return of Yojimbo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. But just reincarnated.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. Because I'm wondering if I'm like an audience member. I'm like, oh yeah, we're watching Return of Yojimbo. I haven't seen a poster or a trailer or anything.
Like, wait a second.
And it's funny even because Kurosawa made a second sequel to Yojimbo properly too. So
Sanjuro, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Does that translate to a few dollars
the
more?
other return.
That'd be so funny. A few dollars more.
The second coming, more like.
Yeah.
Sorry, where are we right now?
Yeah, we should move on with the story.
When the Rojos discover the stranger has freed Marisol, they capture and torture him. Nevertheless, he escapes and creates chaos. Believing he is allied with the Baxters, the Rojos set fire to the Baxter home, massacring them as they flee the burning building. Ramon kills John and Antonio Baxter after pretending to spare them. Consuelo, Baxter's wife, appears and curses the Rojos for killing the unarmed family members, but she is shot to death by Esteban.
Man,
Esteban.
this scene was brutal.
Oh,
like
yeah.
this is where it earned that like gritty R rating. I think this is an R-rated movie.
Because
but
even today, watching it, I was a little.
Whoa.
You get that little sense of, okay, if I were watching this for the first time in 1967, I would be a little disturbed by this. You know,
Oh, yeah.
This would be a little too graphic.
So first, I think the torturing of Joe still holds up today. That is a knockdown, drag-out torture
Yeah.
scene.
Oh, it was hard to watch.
And the prosthetic work, I don't know if it was prosthetics, but what they did to his nose and his cheeks
And his
and
hand.
His eye.
hand, it
Yeah.
looked real and painful.
Yeah.
And
They
when he's
did a good job with creating tension in that scene, too.
and just watching him move after being through all of that, like you believe that he's feeling that to the bone.
Yeah.
But yeah, then followed by the massacre, the burning of the Baxters. That really establishes Ramon as just the true villain
Right.
of this movie. Just
You have to think that the character's thinking about the consequences of his actions, too, even though what he did was the right thing, letting the family escape.
Yeah.
This was directly the cause of that.
this is also part of I want to say it's part of the darker side of Joe's character as well, because you see he basically lit the match to all of this happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
There would have been some sort of violence erupting
yeah.
at some point down the road, but he expedited that for
Yeah.
sure.
Right. For profit.
And
Yes.
but you don't see much of a negative reaction on his
Yeah.
part as because of all of that, and apart from wanting to save the child and Marisol.
Yeah.
So he's it makes you wonder about his life, what he's been through, what
Yeah.
kind of violence he's seen, and how hardened or desensitized he is to all of that.
You're thinking, like, all right, so long as this guy doesn't die, it should be fine, you
Yeah.
know? Like, when he's watching his friend, what's, the bell ringer, is that what
Yeah,
it
the
is?
bell ringer.
The bell ringer.
What was his name, Marie? You
I don't know if the bell ringer had a name, but there was
it was Wanda
Curio.
Dios or Jose.
Yeah, there you
one
go.
of those.
One of
Silvanito is
those.
the innkeeper.
I thought Rubio was the one being tortured.
The
That they
innkeeper.
said wouldn't
No,
talk.
no, Rubio is one of the henchmen for the Rojos. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, just whenever he's being tortured, he's keeping a watchful eye over him, but he can't really do anything because he's so beat up. But you have to think that maybe he's hoping he doesn't die, or he's just thinking, all right, so long as he doesn't die, I'm gonna be fine. Like, this isn't really too bad. He's just getting beat up. It's fine.
I think it's to a point where it's interesting that this film, when you're watching it, you get sort of the vague concept that the Baxters are maybe nicer than the Rojos, but it's supposed to be established that both sides are criminal families.
Right.
Yeah.
And in this representation, I didn't do a whole lot of digging here, so don't quote me on this, but during this time in Italy, there was a lot of unrest where they were kind of tired of the typical, the police reform and a character that is representative of abiding or law abiding, basically, because there was a lot of kind of counterculture going on. And this was just before the leaded years, I think. Mm-hmm. And so having this character of Joe, the man with no name, as sort of this middleman who's just kind of caught in between and almost more protective of those that are in the middle of this problem was the kind of anti-hero that they could sympathize with.
Buzzword, anti-hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly what he is, too.
Yeah.
I think he probably maybe underestimated the actual cruelty, especially on the Rojo side. I think he saw the opportunity of, they're both criminals, but there are up till now at least some kind of unspoken rules of engagement where, yes, they're killing each other, but they're at least armed or they're going for the same thing, so it's kind of fair game. This is like it said in the plot description, was a massacre. They burn them, they smoke them out, and they're unarmed, and he even just toys with them, like he lets them plead for his life and still shoots them.
in a way, it's kind of mirroring that shootout that happened with the cavalry. But in that sequence, you don't really feel much. You're just like, oh, here's the bad guy. But here, oh, these are unarmed people who are surrendering, and they are still shooting them. And then they even save the woman. They even shot an unarmed woman.
Yeah, Consuelo Baxter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's really interesting for Ramon's character and basically the people involved. I loved the filming of this sequence where they would do close-ups of all of the Rojo men and how they've just kind of turned into sort of animalistic faces and just, covered in grease and sweat. And then you get to Ramon, who's kind of been just pushed over the edge, where he tries to be cool and calculating, but his passion and his pride has been snubbed. So now he's just been full on aggro.
Yeah, it's just bloodlust.
Yes. I also, in this scene, I think this is just a really big moment that sort of turns this film into something more. And something that I've appreciated that Leone does is his use of foreshadowing, which he kind of with the suit of armor, how Ramon, like he finds the suit of armor with a bunch of bullet holes in it, and that sort of foreshadowing things to come. And then here, the curse of Consuelo, where she's telling them, like, I hope you all burn in hell. I hope your brothers are spitting up blood, which we will find they actually do in the end.
Oh, that's cool.
In addition to that second moment where he's, shooting the heart into that suit of armor, an actual heart, and then whenever, I guess we haven't got to this point yet, but... All
right, I'll move on. With the help from Piripero, the local coffin maker, the stranger escapes town, hiding in a coffin. He recovers in a nearby mine and plots as he lays low. When Piripero tells him that Silvanito has been captured, the stranger returns to town to confront the Rojos. With a steel chest plate hidden beneath his poncho, he goads Ramon to aim for his heart, as Ramon's shots bounce off and Ramon spins his whole magazine on his Winchester rifle.
So tell me that Iron Man did not steal this cave sequence. The whole just...
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, prepping for... He's taken captive, prepping for battle, building his Iron Man Mark I suit, and then he goes out and takes on the terrorists, or in this case, the bad cowboy gang.
Yeah. I love how they reference the metal when he's in the cavern and just shooting at it and just testing for weakness in it, and gets the idea for it later. I like that they don't treat you like an idiot in the movie.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, this could be used for a suit of armor. Yeah. This will get me through this. I think that a lot of weaker movies would have done that, and instead they just slightly show it, and then later it comes around.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
we're smart. We can figure it out.
Just him shooting the one spot multiple times to verify. All right, this I will be fine.
Could I feasibly survive shots? Yeah.
Even if he shoots a number of times, even though I'm shooting with a pistol and this is a rifle, but
well, distance and everything.
Yeah, this is kind of like that. It's a training montage, but done very well,
and within like a couple minutes,
and with subtlety,
sitting on the ground.
This is a narrative that's been used in a lot of films over time, and I think it particularly speaks to people, or the middlemen, the middle class, and those downtrodden in particular. And that's the protagonist being beat down within an inch of their life and then having to crawl away and, just basically nursing themselves back to health and then coming back with a vengeance, but a calculated vengeance, not just a willy-nilly rampage. So and it's just so satisfying to watch, because that ascension is so much more satisfying when you bring down a character to their absolute low.
I will say it's kind of funny, like, all these years Ramon has been aiming for the heart, and in the one moment that it counted, he couldn't aim for anything else. If you just shot Joe in the head, it would have been game over.
Thinking.
Well, I think to me, it was almost more like he's seen a ghost, sort of. Yeah. And he's so distracted by this kind of nervous energy combined with anger and frustration that his reliability in his weapon, like this is a Winchester, it's the
And his
next
stubborn nature.
technological advancement
to
in
rule the
guns,
West.
you know?
Yeah.
And so he's so reliant on his own power, and he's never been overthrown before, that it's kind of, this is his blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he's been training for.
Well, especially being challenged, it induces rage, and that also,
Yeah.
blinds you as well.
Right.
We also get Pero in this time. I know they kind of reference him in the beginning, but we get a little bit more development with him.
I love him.
I know. He added so much levity to the situation, and I didn't really expect
He's
him to
just
come
a
back too
little
much. I
crazy
guess we
old
did get a
man.
little bit of,
Well, he has to bury people for a living, so
well, honestly,
Got
I'm
dynamite.
excited
Excited the
about
whole
it.
time.
Yeah, he had
I
dynamite.
stole it from the Rojos.
Honestly, in a way, Joe kind of died there, and he put him in his coffin, and he came out.
Yeah, he was
Resurrected.
resurrected. Yep.
And that explosive sequence was actually done pretty well, I
Yeah.
will say.
I love that he didn't actually use the dynamite to attack, more to grab their attention almost,
He
so that he
barely
could
used it.
stand there. His figure just standing there in the distance was, yeah.
And how else would you end it but him doing a 1v4?
Yeah.
Speaking of
1v5, I think
Five.
it was.
1v5.
That was almost like a V
Yeah.
for Vendetta moment too, where it's just
Yeah.
like, why won't you die?
Yeah,
yeah.
basically. I think the only thing that detracted this moment for me, or kind of lessened it a little, was the fact that he didn't kill all of them. I really wanted him to. But that there was Esteban, the dumbest of
Yeah.
the three,
Well,
hiding in
Let
a...
me read the last paragraph
yeah.
so we can cover it real quick.
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
I thought we were already there. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The stranger shoots the rifle from Ramon's hand and kills Don Miguel, Rubio, and the three other Rojo men standing nearby. He then uses the last bullet in his gun to free Salvanito, tied hanging from a post. After challenging Ramon to reload his rifle faster than he can reload his own revolver, the stranger shoots and kills Ramon. Esteban Rojo aims for the stranger's head from a nearby building, but is shot dead by Silvanito. The stranger bids farewell and rides away from the town in the film's last shot.
Such a
you
cool
have it.
standoff.
I would have wished that he used the dynamite to kill that guy.
Esteban.
It's a little
it's
too
less personal.
bombastic.
It's less
for
personal.
his
No, but that
taste.
would be more personal if he saved the one stick of dynamite he had for that one guy.
It doesn't really fit his sort of character.
Okay.
I think he's not very explosive. It's
All
very
right, so like obviously.
yeah. I know you.
So-
It would have been really cool
But
though.
like,
I'm actually rethinking this. My first reaction to this whole death sequence, and I love this standoff. I think him pitted against Ramon is just such a perfect end. And I love, like, I feel like the last half of this film has much more of Leone's, like, artistic shots and kind of that perspective of Ramon going down and then using the camera to show where his eyes are traveling as he's
Yeah.
losing consciousness.
That had to be like revolutionary.
Yeah,
during
that
the
was
time.
really cool.
Yeah.
And so I loved that. I think I was a little disappointed that Silvanito got the last kill, but as I think about it, it's I think it's justified, because really he's been the one that's been downtrodden in this town the whole time without anything he can do about it. And
now-
so him getting that final shot with one of the three Rojo brothers makes sense and is more satisfying as I think
Yes.
about it.
I agree. I wasn't bothered by it, but you added something to that I really
Yes.
hadn't thought about, so it kind of adds to my respect for that scene.
Especially now that both families are basically wiped out, and you're left
Yeah.
with Silvanito as the pillar of
One
probably
of three
rebuilding the
people.
town.
yeah, I was gonna say, man, there must be like, it's just like one family's worth of people. How are they gonna proliferate on that?
They'll get some people to come in, I'm sure.
They'll figure it out.
They'll hire some extras.
Yeah, that definitely a very satisfying finale to this film. I love how quickly he takes out those guys.
Oh yeah,
All four of them.
Just fanning the hammer.
Yes. It just there is no question that he could end this movie at any moment he wanted. He's
Oh, yeah.
No, he's gonna make this last kill last a little longer, or
Yeah.
not even kill. But you know what I mean.
he's playing with his food before.
Yeah, he
So
literally
any
tells
final-
him to reload, and instead of just taking him when he's down, he's like, all right, you told me that your Winchester's better than my 45. Let's see it.
Yeah.
Put your
You
money
had to
where your
beat
mouth
him
is.
twice.
Emasculated him in front of the town.
It also re-emphasizes the fact that he isn't just a, ready to shoot at all times. He wanted to make it a fair fight, which kind of makes him feel like more like a traditional cowboy, giving him the opportunity to fight him back.
Yeah, but secretly knowing, like, you have no chance.
Yeah, I guess
Pretty much, yeah.
I took it more as he's confident in his abilities. If he wasn't confident, then I think he would take pot shots and do what's smart and efficient. I don't know. It built his character
Yes.
into like a legend, basically, because he's got the skills.
Yeah. All right, any final words on Fistful of Dollars before we move on to the next portion of this podcast?
I will say, if you like this movie, go watch Yojimbo as well, because I want to, we didn't talk about it much, but I think this was deserving of, just talking strictly about A Fistful of Dollars
Right.
first. But if you're interested, that is also a very, very good film. This credits a lot of its choices in, a lot of its plot points with that film. So it's very important to watch in tandem with
Who
this.
knows? Maybe it could be a future episode someday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually
Yeah.
interesting how kind of harder to find Yojimbo is, even though it was the original, so to speak. And this one is
It's
obviously everywhere.
Yeah,
Yes.
you pretty much have to go to Criterion to get it. Like
Yeah.
it's on Criterion Collection, so
Yeah.
you're basically I don't know if it's on their downloadable app, but I know if it's on Blu-ray. So but those Blu-rays are kind of expensive. It's like $20 to $30. It's not non-existent, but it's
It's definitely kind of been sidelined over the years.
yeah. All right. So that closes out our story portion of the podcast. We'll pick this back up on the other side after this brief bumper and give our brief reviews along with scores and talk about this franchise.
All right.
See you then. Welcome back, guys.
Hey.
David, as always, has our scores in a little bucket on little pieces of paper. And he's going to draw them at random. After those scores are drawn and we talk about our reviews, we will get into the franchise portion of this. So, yeah.
Who's ready
Yeah.
to hear some scores?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Let's start with this little sucker.
Duck, you sucker.
Noah,
That's me.
9.5.
Man, I hate going first because I have to talk.
Well, you can't talk during all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think we've actually started with you in a while.
Yeah, I
so
know. I haven't been the first one in a while.
Go ahead.
But I believe I will stick with my 9.5. I just going in with fresh eyes, not having seen it before. It's not swayed by any rose tinted goggles. Was it glasses?
Glasses, goggles,
Either one
either or.
works.
Goggles,
It's
whatever.
interchangeable.
I think it speaks for the movie that I was able to enjoy it as much as I did. So I didn't know that there was any predecessor to this movie that it was kind of taking from. So I'm going to ignore that. And my thoughts going in were this is kind of just a Western masterpiece, in my opinion. I think there isn't anything about it that I can say I disliked. I really like all of the characters and their kind of natural interactions with each other and just the way that they set up the story and how I think the main character is a really likable main character.
Or at least fascinating.
Yeah, Joe.
wouldn't quite-
I've always liked kind of the anti-hero type characters. So
Yeah.
yeah.
9.5? All right.
9.5.
Moving on. Irina with a 9.
So mine almost was a 9.5. And I have two factors into why I'm giving it a 9, because I think this is a near perfect film. And my first reasoning for lowering the score would be there's a little bit of confusion in the beginning where I feel like it's a little bit ho-hum, where you're kind of presented with, yes, an unusual protagonist, but you you don't really feel the depth of what's going on yet until about halfway through the film. My other reasoning is because I happen to know that this is based on a previous film. And it's really hard to give something a perfect 10 when a lot of the plot points are directly taken from a movie that was only released 3 years prior. Which I'm trying to think of modern examples. It would be like we saw a movie a few years ago and another one that is virtually identical but in a different setting.
So let the right one in
later.
and let me in.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. A lot of horror movies do it, honestly, like Ring You and The Ring and
Yeah.
Ju-on and The Grudge.
It's it to me sort of lowers the number a little, but still I didn't want it to go any lower than 9 because I think, with that being said, he did see Akira Kurosawa's work and actually looked at it as a piece of art. He wasn't just trying to make a quick buck, from my understanding. And it's obvious this wasn't a quick buck because while it was low budget, it comes across as higher budgeted than it really is, you know?
Yeah. It
And
seems like a sweeping Western.
There's a lot of, there's evidence of a lot of love and care, and he was right in realizing that it would make a great Western, and a unique one at that. And there are a lot of moments and character changes that I think in some ways kind of improve upon, dare I say it, Yojimbo. So having seen both films, I felt like I needed to watch Yojimbo if I was going to score this one. Otherwise, it would feel unfair. But so I'm sticking with my 9, and I really, really like this film.
Not your 45. Get it?
Got it.
She's more into rifles.
Y'all are so lame.
No, I got it.
All right, next up, Reese with a 9.0.
So, yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of the things that Irina say, apart from the Yojimbo connection, which
It's a great movie.
I have not seen Yojimbo. I know of it. I knew that this was a remake of it. One thing I didn't know is how close in succession it followed it.
Yeah.
Like just 3 years, which is
It was crazy.
So they just kind of saw an idea, maybe an opening, and like, hey, we could take advantage of this great opportunity here. This would make a great Western. But my sole criticisms of this excellent, nearly perfect movie are that it is slightly convoluted at times. And while I appreciate all of the craft and all of the characters, I would never say there was a moment where I was emotionally moved. I was not emotionally affected by this movie one way or the other. It's just a very cool movie and way ahead of its time in terms of a lot of the craft that it went into it, and just the way it treats its protagonist, which is, he's barely a protagonist.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of taking Westerns, and
I mean,
very, very iconic in a lot of ways. But other than me feeling that there's a lot of really interesting things going on here. It's obviously a trailblazer in terms of Westerns, and it revitalized the genre. I just wouldn't say I ever really felt anything in my heart.
to kind of counter that point, you have to think of when it was made, and that kind of movie didn't really exist at that time.
That is why I'm giving this a 9 out of 10.
All right, fair enough.
Well, also, I guess that gives you room because this is sort of Leone sort of coming into his signature style.
Yes, and I also wanted to give it a 9 out of 10 because I feel like the best is yet to come in this trilogy, and I wanted to leave some room to... I honestly was kind of like...
all the room.
Yeah, I was kind of on the fence here between 9 and 9.5 because
that's how
there's there's very little to criticize about this movie. But I think there's something to that though, where I wasn't emotionally moved. But apart from that, it's a perfectly structured movie. I love how this has been carried on from film to film, and its influences can be seen in today's movies. Like it's lasted that long. It's a timeless classic and the first great movie in what I'm expecting to be one of the better trilogies to ever come out.
Right.
So yeah, 9 out of 5. 9 out of 5. 9 out of 5, guys. Write that down. That's
9 out of 5.
9 out of 10.
All right, next up, AJ with an 8.5.
Ooh.
So I immediately take that back.
No, really?
I was actually between a 9 and an 8.5, and I kind of went heavy-handed in docking the score, primarily because it was derivative of Yojimbo.
Yeah.
Like Irina kind of voiced all of my thoughts though, going through and rewatching this movie. I watched Yojimbo after I saw Fistful, and so that kind of, I guess, tinted my bias a little bit. But now, as I'm rewatching it now, I do see and appreciate more Leone's vision and artistic style, and what Eastwood brought to the table, and also Morricone, what he brought to the table. So that balances it out, in my opinion. I do think, like Reese said, it's not perfect. There's room for improvement. I know there's room for improvement, not to foreshadow too much, but the technical issues, there's audio, it's an old movie, and also the budget constraint. At times you can tell it's a budget movie, but then I know that, they really overcame a lot of obstacles like language and the multinational collaboration and stuff like that. It's an excellent movie. I'm not going to go into what everyone has said before, but I'm going to go with a 9.
Yeah.
All right, 9.
All right, and last but not least is David, and I am going to be the party pooper of this party.
Oh, no.
So I originally put down a 7.5.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And similar to AJ, I was between two scores, 7.5 and 8, and I went on the lesser side. I am going to bump it up to an 8.
All right.
And a lot of that was similar to you, AJ, as well. It's on in the background, and I am still watching and enjoying it.
I guess it must not have been very rewatchable then.
You're right. 8 is just a terrible score. It's one of the worst you can give.
1 point above Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Well, there it is. There it is. All right. Well,
Hey, were you looking at the theater in 1960 whatever?
1967 in the States. So, that's about 2 years after I was working there.
But that was after you were working in Italy, right?
Yeah. I had a study abroad.
every frame of this movie, if you just pause it, it looks
You
beautiful.
should write an autobiography.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Sorry, what were you saying?
to get into my reasoning, it's similar to AJ's, and I think that the reason that I dock at so many points is that I'm more affected by the fact that it was heavily influenced by Yojimbo. And after hearing other, I've listened to podcasts, I've looked up reviews and stuff, and just hearing how much it was influenced by it, it kind of tainted it in my eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm not much of a Western person to begin with. And the fact that this movie captivated me that much already, to me says 8 is really solid.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues with the movie inherently that I think we overlook, and it is the 60s, so there are going to be more errors, but it just didn't sell it to me. And I know that there's nowhere to go but up from here. So I'm like, if I give this a 7.5 or an 8,
you have a lot of room.
There's a lot of room to move up. So I think that an 8 is a pretty well-deserved score.
All right.
Whatever you say, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Have you even watched this movie?
Yeah, twice.
I think that as far as the problem with it being a remake, I totally had the same issue where I had watched this first, and then I decided, I should watch Yojimbo just to see, just how similar it is. And in fact, it is incredibly similar. But then I watched Fistful of Dollars again because I felt like after watching that, I kind of distanced myself from it. And afterwards, I was met with this issue of, but I like both of these. Just this one is set in the Edo era, and this one is a Western. But I like them both, and I think the directors have their own voice in the story. I think it's in a little poor taste that this one came 3 years after, but in general, he did put his own vision into it. So that has to be my final say on it.
It depends on how big Yojimbo was in the States at the time, because it could have been a situation of, oh man, I love this story. How about I bring it to the U.S.?
It was not big. I can say that.
But
I don't think that was the reason.
A lot of the scenes are copy paste.
Yeah.
Like shot for shot, same angle, same exact thing Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree with Irina. I think watching it after Yojimbo, you do see the differences and appreciate the style.
Yeah. It's very weird. It's hard to really give this a 100% solid rating just because of that fact. And yeah.
I didn't see it, so ignorance is bliss.
There you go.
I'm with you.
Story of your life.
I'll fight.
Okay. So crunch those numbers for us, AJ. Where does this one fit in with the rest of the pack?
All right, so 8.9 is our average across the group. That puts it just below Soldier.
What?
Just kidding. So we're ahead of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which had an 8.8, and below Curse of the Black Pearl at a 9.4.
All right.
That's a pretty big difference in scores previously. 8.8 to 9.4.
Yeah.
It's a good company to be around, though,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely in the upper echelon of all of that.
When I first saw it compared to Black Pearl, I was like, is this better than a Pirates movie? Is it more significant? Is it more substantial? It was a tough question to answer, but it goes back to the originality. With Disney, they literally created a great movie based on an amusement ride. This one is a copy of another movie that already did some of the legwork on the story.
Right. Yeah, and give Pirates another 40 years. Who knows how we'll look back on it? Because I believe this movie was 40 years old by the time Pirates came out. So
that's crazy.
It's still a more modern movie. This has the benefit of time on its side to become iconic.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to the franchise portion of this. So, critically, this movie did pretty well, guys. Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 98% with an audience score of 91%. On Metacritic, it has a sort of baffling 65, but upon further examination, I discovered that only 7 critics had actual submitted reviews to Metacritic, so I wouldn't put much stock in that score. Metacritic's weird like that. But the audience score on Metacritic is 8.4 out of 10. And on IMDb, which is just an audience-based score, it has an 8.0. So I'd say that's mostly on point.
Yeah.
I think we should add the caveat that obviously these websites did not exist in 1967.
Yeah.
So this is looking back at it after it's iconic already, like you said.
After the
I will say I was, panning some of the reviews, panning for gold. And a lot of them were, not a lot of them, but there were certain reviews that were
indifferent.
That were in that time reviewing that movie. Oh. From some really old.
Some of the research I saw
from the newspaper or whatever.
Yes, yeah. I'm assuming so. Yeah, I was looking into some of the critics, and they were long passed away.
I heard that a lot of the critics at the time were indifferent because of the change in style, and that a lot of the people weren't ready for this. Eventually it changed over.
This is what happens with a lot of critics and kind of the film industry, those kind of pulling the strings, is that anything that deviates from the system, they immediately start to poo-poo it, in my mom's words, as she would say.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons was because of the Hays Code, and a lot of critics, because this was gratuitous in its violence and wasn't, sticking to the code.
And an amoral character.
They show someone fall down into the dirt.
More like guidelines.
They had, like AJ said, they had an immoral character, and so they kind of dragged it through the mud a little bit, whereas the audience actually really enjoyed the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's get on to that box office.
I have no idea how this one's going to go.
Now, I did the work, and I adjusted everything because of inflation.
Should we guess the inflated price or the original?
We will be doing the inflated price.
Okay.
Because I think that is easier for us to
grasp.
deal with in these modern times.
Okay.
So the budget to this movie, back in the day, it was $225,000. That adjusts to $1.8 million.
That is cheap.
Yeah. It was a very low budget movie.
My goodness. Well, for a movie.
So, based off of that, what do you think this movie did at the box office? Give me your inflated answer.
All right, so what time of year did it come out?
1964. I don't know what time of year.
They didn't track those things back then.
So also
I could have probably found
1964 was the European release.
1967 was the U.S.
Yeah.
1967. Movies were growing at this point.
David's currently looking it up real quick.
And you said
September.
September, so pretty much summer.
Close to the fall.
Pretty much. My goodness, this is a tricky one. You said what, 1 point something million?
Oh, wait, I do want to clarify something else just from looking this up. It released in Spain and Italy first,
Yeah,
right?
1964.
So are we...
Just worldwide.
All right.
I will say
3 years later or whatever.
The one hint I will give you is Italy and all of that is included in this worldwide total. Mm-hmm. But the overseas, including Italy, was not significant at all in this movie's box office. Yes.
So I have thought, I think it's probably about, I bet it made like 30 million.
30 million?
Yeah.
Adjusted?
This is really hard to mentally figure out.
Adjusted 30 million, because I think at the time, people weren't like regularly going to movies all the time.
Yeah.
But I think also this was probably a hot topic as far as movies did go. And 15 times your budget is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I have no reason to disagree with you, but my knee-jerk reaction was around the 50 range.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no basis for that, which it's like 50 times the budget.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
Noah, 30?
30.
Is your official answer?
Yeah.
30? David?
50.
50?
And
Irina?
I don't know.
if you bring that
Just
down
guess.
to
Have some fun.
the
So
normal
a fistful of dollars.
I got him.
AJ?
$100 million.
Whoa.
All right.
Wait, let me try and calculate my no inflation.
No, let me change my answer.
No, it's not changing my answer. I'm calculating the what my answer would be if it wasn't inflated.
Yeah.
So 200,000 you said?
No, yeah, 225,000 for budget.
Carry the R, drop
Back in
the
the
T.
day.
Okay, so that's like
Translates to 1.8 million though.
Huh?
That adjusts to 1.8 million
Okay.
today's dollars.
all right. Yeah, that's tricky.
Do we need to do the mental math?
Yeah, let's just
Fine,
stick
fine,
with the
fine.
30.
Monster
Don't,
math.
fine.
All right, last chance. Are you sure you didn't want to put a number in, Irina?
Yeah, I'm sure. I won't
Okay.
embarrass myself.
AJ is easily the winner here.
Dang.
This movie grossed 14.8 million back in the day, and that adjusts to 115 million.
Dang, man.
Big money maker.
Oh, yeah.
That's
You
crazy.
could definitely understand why
On
this
a small
kicked off.
budget.
Yeah,
Must
this
have had
kicked-
some legs.
Yeah, it kicked off the Western genre. I mean, not kicked off. It revitalized, as I've said 50 million times already. That genre and
Made
yeah,
Eastwood a
there's no
star for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely put him on the map. We would have had a different Dirty Harry if not for this movie.
I think he made like $15,000 for this movie originally.
Yeah, very
did.
low, which I forgot to adjust his salary for this. I'm kind of curious now as to what that translates to, but oh well, another day. But yeah, this movie spawned 2 sequels. Surprising that it didn't go even farther than that, but I guess we'll get into that.
I mean, you said it was like, what, almost $15 million for the, what's it called? The box office return?
That was the unadjusted, yeah, $14.8 million.
So that's pretty close to 15 for his 15,000. So just instead of millions, do thousands. So it'd be like 115,000.
Oh, true. I would still take that paycheck.
Yeah.
Especially in a role that doesn't require you to speak that much and just look cool.
But he did more than just look cool.
He was relying on
No,
body
I know.
language mostly.
I know. I didn't mean to be reductive. So yeah, this movie affected its franchise in a very positive way. So much so that we got For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Such a classic title, even though I haven't seen it.
I even think Fistful of Dollars is a classic title. Like,
Yeah, it's a great follow-up name.
But yeah, that wraps up our discussion on A Fistful of Dollars. This movie definitely spawned a new generation of westerns and has been highly influential over the past, what is it, almost 60 years now? There's no question as to why it earned its sequels or got its sequels. So yeah, next week we're talking about For a Few Dollars More, the sequel to this film. So you can find our podcast on anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We've got the podcast music from the films that we've covered on YouTube and Spotify. And we also have an Instagram page that you can follow. Our boy David is constantly checking in on that.
Yeah.
Posting, responding to people. He's very responsive, guys.
I try.
Yeah.
So talk to him. He needs it.
Reach out. Let us know what you're interested in. What kind of franchises you'd be interested in listening to.
He's
Yeah.
lonely.
He's lonely.
So please like, rate, subscribe, follow. Anything you can do to help us if you enjoy our podcast or even just mildly think it's okay. Anyway, that is the end of this episode.
Yay!
We will see y'all next week.
See ya.
Bye.
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 You see, I understand you men were just playing around, but the mule, he doesn't get it. Of course, if you were all to apologize.